Hi, everyone uses smartphone keyboard apps, but no one really thinks much about them. So let's give them a bit of love and attention they so deserve. But I will talk about these apps from an Indian perspective. Before we do that, I'd like to talk a bit about my typing habits. I type mainly for social media on my phones and I type a lot. I mean, really a lot. And while all of you lesser mortals might think that social media is for unwinding and recreational purposes and all that, but no, yours truly wants to be proper. Capitalization, correct spellings, and punctuations and all that. And yes, I use semicolon, 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 semicolon. Occasionally, I also use Hindi words in Roman script, but mostly I stick to English alphabet. So you see, I need to type a lot, I need to type fast so that I can keep up with the flow of my thoughts, and I want to be accurate. So what's the problem, you may ask? The problem is principle of uncertainty, which states that a keyboard can be fast or accurate, but not both. Well, some of you might wonder that Heisenberg never used smartphones. Well, that's right, that's how he ended up becoming a great physicist. Coming to the demo text that I have designed for this test, it consists of long words, numerals, an Indian name which is neither very common but nor obscure, and an emoji. The keyboard apps I have included in this video are the Android versions of SwiftKey by Microsoft, Gboard by Google, Messages by Exedias, and finally iOS keyboard for iPhones. So let's see how these keyboards perform. Okay, let's speed this up a bit. Well, I'd like to point out that this should not be taken as a speed test because there are a lot of variables that go into how the individual keyboards have performed in this test. For example, I had not used messages in a long time. However, I could manage to type simply because of my muscle memory. As you might have noticed, all these keyboards require tapping as well as swiping, and 3 of them are conventional QWERTY format, whereas one, that is Messages, has a very unconventional format. It's important to note that swiping on a QWERTY keyboard requires good knowledge of touch typing because you need to know the positions of individual keys. Okay, so here are my impressions of these keyboards. But before I actually rate them, I'd just like to enlist the parameters based on which I have evaluated them. Speed and accuracy are definitely foremost. Then we look into how these individual keyboards adapt to your unique usage pattern. Then text selection, its definition and translation, scrolling and deleting, and customizability, which includes resizing, floating keyboards, and language modes. Then we look into support for Indian languages and some other miscellaneous features. Let's look at SwiftKey first. It is now a Microsoft-owned product, and at the outset I must say that accuracy with it while swiping is very frustrating. However, making it unlearn any of the unwanted predictions is fairly easy. However, it does predict text well while tapping. Secondary characters are very easily accessible. For example, if you press the J button, you can input the equal sign. Both horizontal and vertical scrolling are supported using the direction keys, and it has a dynamic backspace. That is, if you tap the backspace button once, individual characters are deleted. However, if you keep it pressed, then entire word gets deleted. Text selection is good. Search and translate functions are all supported by Google. Switching between keyboards and languages is fairly easy, and it's also very customizable. It supports both one and two-handed usage, floating keyboard feature, switching between English and English keyboards for instance. Layouts can be changed simply by swiping on the space bar. For example, you can switch between English and English keyboards. SwiftKey comes with very good theme support. There are a lot of vibrant and bold themes. Unfortunately, some of these themes do not properly support secondary characters. That is, upon sustained pressing those keys, you can actuate the secondary characters, but they are not visible on the keyboard. SwiftKey also provides user statistics like length of swiped words, new words learned, and number of taps saved. These statistics are quite fun. Next is Gboard app, which is native to Android. Its text prediction with swiping is fair, meaning neither it's very good nor as bad as of SwiftKey. Making it unlearn unwanted predictions is very cumbersome. Scrolling is supported by swiping on the spacebar. However, you have to be very careful not to press the button, otherwise space would be entered instead of your being able to scroll within the text. Unfortunately, vertical scrolling is not available. Keeping the backspace button deletes only the individual characters. All other features are more or less same as that of SwiftKey. Gboard also supports multiple themes, and while they are not as vibrant or bold as that of SwiftKey, but they are consistent. Statistics provided are very limited, that is just the number of new words learned. The last Android keyboard app is MessageEase, which has the most unconventional layout. It consists of 9 squares, at the center of each of which are characters which are supposedly most commonly found in the English language. Other lesser used English characters and secondary characters are at the 4 corners of each of these squares. MessageEase does support text prediction, but I haven't really tried it. Secondary characters are very easy to enter, and this keyboard is best if you do not really intend to use text prediction. Basic customization is supported, which includes changing the size of the keyboards, the length and color of the strokes, and vibration strength felt while entering the characters. As our comparison video clip showed, it is fairly slow. And while it supports horizontal scroll only, it is very good because the surface area for the spacebar is fairly large on which you can swipe. Text selection is good, and again, search, definition, and translate functions are supported by Google. Devanagari script is supported. However, you cannot switch between 2 keyboards. If you have to switch to a new keyboard, you have to delete the pre-existing one. Also, no other Indian language is supported. Emojis are well supported, however, GIFs and stickers are not. The greatest concern with this app is privacy. As you can see, when you select this app, the Android system gives you a warning that all your text inputs can be recorded by this app and can be transmitted elsewhere, which is very disconcerting because a similar warning is not shown when you select SwiftKey, which is also a non-native keyboard owned by Microsoft. Also, this is an abandoned app and it has not been updated since July 2018. Lastly, we come to the iOS keyboard, which according to me has the best accuracy with swiping. There are certain words that are easily mistaken for each other by these keyboards because of the proximity of corresponding characters to each other. For example, OK and play, for and FIR for, and versus, abs, etc. However, this problem seems to be less common with iOS keyboard. Unlearning of undesirable predictions is very cumbersome. Secondary characters, numbers and punctuations are not displayed on the primary view, so an additional tap is required to input them. Backspace deletes just one character at a time. However, if it is sustained pressed, then the characters are deleted fairly quickly. iOS keyboard, according to me, has the best scrolling arrangement available. You can scroll horizontally, vertically, as well as obliquely to reach any desired point within the text field. Text selection is easy and multiple other options are available like text replacement. However, translate function is not available. It should also be noted that the options provided with selected text are contextual. That is, they change with the app in which you are typing. Quite to my surprise, support for Indian names and Indian languages is very good in iOS. There is virtually no customization, so to speak, and the user statistics provided are very limited. To summarize, if you are going to mainly only swipe for typing, then iOS followed by Gboard provide a good balance between typing speed and accuracy. If you are going to only tap without using word prediction, then message ease is the best. However, if you see advantage in predictions for multiple words and even entire sentences, then SwiftKey is a good option. But if you are going to type out only in the old school fashion by just tapping on the individual keys, then there is really not much to differentiate among all these keyboard options. If you are after customization, then SwiftKey is slightly better than Gboard. Customizations provided by Message Ease are geared mainly towards functionality, and iOS keyboard provides no customization at all. That's it in this video. If you found it helpful, do like it and share it. At this point, I would not advise subscribing because I'm not really sure how many more such videos am I going to publish. And lastly, I'd like to thank my wife Vidhi for her support and also for assurance of reconsidering not to disown me after publication of this video. If you would like to know a bit more about the equipment used for recording this video, then look at the description. Thank you.